Hello. This is Antya from Byte Shuffle. Thank you for always watching our videos. This time, I put together a guide on how to play against UB Tempo when using Doomsday, including strategy tips and sideboard considerations. There's also a link to the pile breakdown video in the description, so feel free to check it out. Here is the deck list we will be using this time. I'll keep this hand since I can smooth it out with draw spells. I'm going to dig for Doomsday. I stacked Edge of Autumn, then Doomsday, and finally Lotus Petal, and drew them in that order. Looks like my opponent is on UB Tempo, so I'm going to try to speed up the game. I'm going all in. From here, I'm increasing my mana to set up the combo. I'll counter it with Daze. There's a chance Orcish Bowmasters might hit the board next turn, but if it doesn't, I'll chain Ponder into Consider from my hand and aim to empty the pile quickly for the win. If they already have Orcish Bowmasters in hand and follow it up with another threat, it puts me in a pretty tough spot. Since I need to absorb at least one of the opponent's plays and push through their counterspells, I feel Force of Will is essential in the pile. If the land in play were an island, it would be easy to play around Wasteland, but since it's a dual land, this becomes a very tricky situation. The opponent's next move is likely between two options, Orcish Bowmasters or Wasteland. Since Orcish Bowmasters is likely coming down, I plan to use Force of Will to stop that threat first, and then build a pile that lets me use another Force of Will to handle any counterspells or removal that follow. This time, I couldn't come up with an optimal pile, so I included 2 copies of Force of Will in the pile. But if the goal is to cover both counterspells and removal, then I think the second Force of Will should have been Cavern of Souls instead. I built the pile in the following order: Thassa's Oracle, Force of Will, Consider, Force of Will. So far, everything is going as expected. If they draw 2 Wastelands, I'm guaranteed to lose. I feel like I misbuilt the pile. In the next sequence, bottoming Force of Will with Consider was a mistake. I should have kept Force of Will, cast Thassa's Oracle, and then used Force to counter any removal or disruption that targeted it. I'm going to throw in Thassa's Oracle and hope for the best. Before sideboarding, I'd like to review the list we used. First, the conclusion. I will explain it step by step. Here are the cards in UB Tempo that can impact Doomsday. First, there's Orcish Bowmasters. If it lands, it puts us in a very difficult position. That's why we pivot to a creature-based plan. Specifically, we bring in Long Goodbye, Barrogoyf, Sheoldred, the Apocalypse, and Murktide Regent. Now, let's go over the game plan the opponent is aiming for, and the strategy we should be pursuing in response. The opponent aims to gain tempo by combining Wasteland with Daze, effectively using Daze as a pseudo Force of Will. If the opponent is effectively running 8 Force of Will style effects, breaking through becomes very difficult, so it's important to avoid falling into their mana denial strategy. Specifically, by utilizing basic lands and leveraging mana acceleration like Lotus Petal and Dark Ritual. This helps prevent the opponent from making Daze function as a pseudo Force of Will. Also, Cavern of Souls becomes a highly valuable land in this matchup, especially since we're going with a creature-based plan. It allows us to resolve game-breaking threats like Sheoldred the Apocalypse and Barrogoyf without worrying about them being countered. So far, we've reviewed both the opponent's game plan and the strategy we should be aiming for. Next, looking at the various counterspells, Force of Will, Daze, Force of Negation, and Consign to Memory. Against these, we bring in cards like Duress, Mystical Dispute, and Flusterstorm. In exchange, we take out all copies of Personal Tutor. This is because the creatures we're siding in are more impactful in this matchup. Additionally, we take out days. This is because the counter spells we brought in from the sideboard are stronger in this matchup. After that, we take out Cabal Ritual. This is because it's the weakest of the mana acceleration options in this matchup. We also take out cards that cost us life. Next, regarding Disruptor Flute, if it's played before Doomsday resolves, you can respond with multiple ritual-based mana sources. If it comes down after Doomsday resolves, you can shift your plan by using cards like Consider or Unearth to adapt. Since we're on a creature-based plan this time, depending on how the game plays out, we might be able to simply ignore it. Next, regarding Null Rod. It shuts down Lotus Petal and Lion's Eye Diamond, so it's something to keep in mind when constructing your pile. Lastly, Surgical Extraction, while not always present, does show up occasionally. I won't go into examples here, but if you want to learn how to play around it, check out the pile breakdown video where I cover specific cases. I'll keep this hand since I can smooth it out with draw spells. I'm going to dig for land. Once I build up my mana, I want to start slamming powerful cards off the top of my library, so I'm going to force my opponent to burn through all their counter spells. I didn't find what I needed, so I'm going to shuffle. I'm using Brainstorm to tuck Sheoldred back into the library. I'm going to dig for land, putting a fetch land on top of the library. I'm playing out Lotus Petal early to play around discard. I'm going to dig for land. The Surveil effect left the card on top of the library. Since Sheoldred is no longer in the deck, I might be able to bait out a wasteland or discard spell by holding Swamp in hand. I'm going all in. From here. If the opponent had a threat in hand, they likely would have played it by now. So it seems they don't currently have another clock in hand. With Thassa's Oracle already on the battlefield, the board state remains balanced as long as we're just staring each other down. If they follow up with a Nethergoyf or Tameo Inquisitive Student, the game could easily slip out of our hands. That's why I'm including Long Goodbye in the pile. It can't be countered. Since a top-decked removal spell from the opponent could break the board parity and lead to a loss, I'm placing Thassa's Oracle third in the pile so I can go off at any moment. In case the opponent draws more counter spells or removal than expected, I'll use discard to scout ahead. If I need an extra discard spell, I'll plan the pile so I can draw the 4th and 5th cards and go for the win from there. I don't expect Wasteland to come down, but just in case, I put Cavern of Souls as the 4th card in the pile to play around it. The 5th card in the pile is Duress, included as a precaution against Consign to Memory. I built the pile in the following order: Duress, Cavern of Souls, Thassa's Oracle, Duress, Long Goodbye. My opponent chose not to shuffle after Ponder and Drew. The opponent is digging with draw spells to find a clock, so things seem to be going according to plan so far. Even if Tameo comes down next turn, it'll be too late, so I'll go ahead and remove Nethergoyf. To prevent the opponent from getting value out of a discard spell that might be rotting in their hand, I'll first use my own discard to scout ahead. The Surveil effect left the card on top of the library. I win the game with Thassa's Oracle. Lastly, I have an announcement. I'm posting the concepts behind the images used in my videos, as well as small flavor-inspired stories, in the YouTube community section. Additionally, I'm selling merch for the channel through the link in the description. If you're interested, be sure to check it out. Thank you for watching up to this point. I apologize for the many play mistakes. I hope to improve at MTG together with everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up. See you next time. This is Antya.